Well, good morning and welcome, everyone. It's good to be back here at VetSecCon for another fun speaking engagement. I'm Brad, and I'll tell you a little bit about me here in just a second, but I like to start these things on time, so we'll go ahead and get rolling. So this morning, I'm talking about the four horses of evil and threat actors and malware. It has been a pretty interesting summer, ugly summer. I don't know. Call it what you will. It has been a very busy summer for me, and I wanted to bring to you some of the lessons learned and things that I've seen out there. Because one of the things you'll find as you look to transition into cybersecurity is A, there's always a lot of stuff going on, and B, you never know where you never know which bad guy you're going to run into in a given year. And where I sit and where I work, right, I see a lot of stuff, and this is some of the stuff that we got to see this summer. And it was a crazy busy summer, and we're still seeing stuff. So, but we'll give you sort of the summary there. So let's see here. Let me get my slides working. All right, here's our outline. I'm jokingly have the question in there, how's your summer been? Because if you can't see it out my window behind me, but it is snowing in the great state of Colorado. We're apparently going to get like 6 inches of snow, and I know it's still October. It's okay, everybody. It's Colorado. It's what happens, but it is pretty darn cold out there today. Before we get started here and get really, really rolling, I just like to take a moment. You might notice I've got a sport ball logo on. That's for the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's in memory of my dad. He passed away about a month ago now, and he is and he's up there watching. And he was an alumni of the Ohio State University. So I'm rooting for them this football season. So that's why you see the Ohio State logo, if anybody was wondering. All right, let's go. This is me. I work in my day job for Accenture Federal Services. I support a lot of our government clients across, all of the department level agencies, the Department of Defense, etc. Right? I get pulled into lots of stuff. If you are looking for a really cool place to land as a transitioning veteran, we do the skill bridge program. We do internships. We also look to hire, veterans and stuff like that with the requisite skills that we're looking for. And oh, by the way, we've got a bunch of stuff that's about to drop, and we're going to need some people. So feel free to connect with me. In fact, we'll just go ahead and start that process right now. Let me go ahead and drop my LinkedIn in the good old chat pod there. Yep. Hey, amateur radio operators. I love it. I love it. I was going to get to that. So in my other life, and I have several apparently, according to my wife, I am a colonel in the Army Reserve. I'm a 17 Alpha cyber warfare officer. I'm currently the G6 for one of the Army divisions, one of our big geographic regions. It's pretty interesting. I did operational stuff for a while. I spent about 20 years in the 3 years active duty, 20 years in the Guard. Now I'm in the reserves. And so I did one of I was the G6 for one of our operational divisions for about 2 years. And then I'm doing the strategic stuff, and I'll find my last home in the Army here pretty soon. I teach at a bunch of universities because it's fun and interesting, and I like to spread the gospel of cybersecurity. One of the most unique ones I've started working at and teaching at is I'm building I have a course in flight right now with Idaho State University, which is teaching Homeland Security and emergency management professionals some of the lingo and the language of cybersecurity. So hopefully someday when you're out there in the field and you're going to talk to somebody that's doing like emergency management because of that bad cyber thing that happened, they don't look at you like you've got a hot dog growing out of your forehead. So there you go. So that's a little bit about me. Yeah, way too many pro certs. Army paid for a lot of those. Super fun. All right. So how's your summer been? How was your summer? So my real question is, did you do Barbenheimer? Right. So when this summer, my kids who are much older now came to me, they said, "Hey, Dad, we want to do Barbenheimer." And I'm like, Barbenheimer. So as you know, if you're paying attention to pop culture, and oh, by the way, folks that want to transition into cybersecurity, pop culture is a big thing for us in the field. Some of us are a little older. That's me, right? And my pop culture references can tend to be older, but you got to pay attention to what's going on because as you come into the field, right, there's a lot of people that really love the pop culture bits. So Barbie and Oppenheimer came out on the same weekend. And so there was this trend that on social media that if you went to see both of those movies, and they said the true Barbenheimer was one day, they said the true Barbenheimer was one day you go to the movies back to back, right? And I'm like, oh, we're not doing that. I can't sit in, 6.5 hours worth of movies or whatever it was. So we split it up over the weekend. So the Saturday we went to Barbie, and we had all this happiness and joy and everything like that. And we finished off the weekend with existential dread with Oppenheimer. Well, that's kind of how my summer was, dealing with these threat actors that we're going to talk about here in a second. Summer started off great, and then it went to heck in a big handbasket. But Oppenheimer is interesting to me personally. So in my day job at Accenture, my primary customer is the Department of Energy. So it was actually a pretty enlightening learning movie for me. If you haven't seen either of those, I totally recommend them. Now that they're streaming, you could do Barbenheimer at your house and never leave the comfort of your own living room. So there you go. All right, we're going to talk about snakes, pandas, extortion, and 0 days today. And if you don't know what any of those terms are, if you're pretty new to the field, that is okay. We're going to cover each one of those in detail, I promise. So the flags are important here. For those of you that are in the military, there's only 2 flags on this slide. We have 2 Russian-associated threat actor groups I'm going to talk about, and 2 Chinese threat actor groups that I'm going to talk about. They are all interesting. Yes, but they are all very, very good, right? So let me just sort of walk this here. This is Snake, APT. This is Vanguard Panda, APT. This is CLOP, ransomware / extortion group, and this is UNC 4841 APT. What is an APT? An APT is an advanced persistent threat. Typically a nation state or a highly resource sponsored actor. Okay, and that's what we're talking about here. So let's jump on in. Snake. The Snake malware is associated with Advanced Persistent Threat 29 APT or Cozy Bear. I didn't draw this picture. This is so here's the thing, right? Everybody says when they retire, I'm going to be a door greeter at Walmart. I would suck at being a door greeter at Walmart. I'm just letting you know. But I want to be when I retire someday, I want to be the guy that names advanced persistent threats, right? It's kind of like you just take like a bunch of cool things, you put them together. And I also want to figure out how to draw so I can draw really cool pictures of threat actors. That's my goal, right? Because these pictures are like super awesome. So who is APT-29? APT-29 typically resides under a group out of Russia called the FSB. That's their Foreign Security Bureau. So if you remember back in the Cold War days, and some of you are probably as old as I am. I saw the end of the Cold War. You are, the KGB sort of split into these little organizations. I'll say this much: GRU is probably the coolest. See right here, GRU. That's like the coolest name for a foreign intelligence service. I'm just saying, right? But we're talking about the FSB. So the FSB Center 16 Center is the ones that were tied to this particular malware. Under the FSB, you have 2 particular threat actors. You have APT-29, Cozy Bear the Dukes, and you have Turla. Turla, in my estimation and analysis, is a supplier of a lot of stuff to APT-29. Hence, you see my error there, supplier with a question mark. Okay? So what does Snake look like? Why is Snake so ugly? Well, I was kind of sad when this came out. And you might say, Brad, how can you be sad about malware and really, really evil stuff? Well, because it came out in the early part of May and was quickly followed up by something that seemed even better, right? Snake malware is quite possibly one of the best pieces of malicious code. So malware is malicious software, and we take the soft we take the soft off, and we take the issues off, and we stick it together, and we call it malware. So it is one of the best written pieces of malware I think I have ever seen. Ouroboros, which is Russian for snake, started in development in 2003 with Windows XP. This thing was hooked into Windows across the board all the way up to it being killed in 2023. That's how long. So when you hear the term, as you come into the field, right, and you hear about the term APT, they are truly advanced. Okay, they are truly advanced. Now, a lot of the work here, to me, right, with this kind of stuff, very atypical, right? Because they did a lot of work to stay hidden over the years. So as Windows improved, right, they began to improve along with it. For example, in 2012, and you see in the middle there, it says Dockers, containers, and kubes when that came out. They actually containerized this thing, right? Amazing, amazing work. It is probably, like I said, probably some of the best written code I've ever seen. And so it's really funny, though, and we're going to get to this, and you might be thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, this is horrible. This is terrible. How do we catch this kind of stuff? How do we stop these kinds of bad guys? We'll get there in just a second, because here's your pop quiz. Throw it in the chat pod. Who writes code? And I'm going to get two answers, I bet, right? Two answers, right? Answer number one, ChatGPT. Probably a fair answer today, right? Probably a fair answer, right? Right? Who writes code, right? Humans write code, right? Humans write code. Put that on your notes there. Humans write code. This is important, and will become very important here in just a second. So APTs are interesting because everybody thinks when they hear the word advanced persistent threat, they freak out. They think about, like, the people with the masks on in the dark holes somewhere in Russia or China or Iran or North Korea, the big four, and they're doing bad stuff. And I guess that's true to an extent, right? But here's one of the secrets of APTs that the APTs don't like when I put this out here. They are excellent at code reuse. They are excellent at TTP reuse. So tactics, techniques, and procedures. If something works, right, they're not going to rebuild it. They're not going to change from that TPP. They may use a different tool, right? But they're not going to change how they do work. So you can see this up here. This is a comparison. So APT21 is purported to be responsible for the Sunburst malware solar winds event, which ruined my Christmas in 2020. Hate those guys. And so again, same actors, same vector, supply chain attack. So Snake was a long-term supply chain attack. SolarWinds was short-term, right? SolarWinds, they implemented and executed in less than a year. Okay, and then they got kicked out. They use this. They like to make use of readily available components, right? They're very much interactive. Here's the thing, right? The Snake malware allowed the Russian FSB to be interactive on the boxes that they had infected. No kidding. Here's the number, folks. Between 50 and 60 countries globally, right? So this malware was in 50 to 60 countries around the world, right? In government entities, in industrial places, in stuff that you don't want bad guys in for 20 years. For 20 years. Okay, so again, I don't like these guys. All right, let's keep going here. So how did we get this? This is the best part in my, remember I said humans, right? Humans write code, right? So bang box on the bottom there. Snake was caught because of human errors. Because of human errors. It looks like from the analysis that the threat actors got sloppy and lazy and did poor coding practices and left a bunch of stuff in plain sight. And what happens is humans are really good at analyzing that stuff. And we found it and we said, that's not right. And then we backed it out and we went, oh, that's really not right. And then we kept going further and went, wow, that goes back 20 years. So because we're nerds, right, we created this operation. This is the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office out of Eastern New York worked to neutralize this thing. They called it Operation Medusa. And who killed Medusa? Here's your history lesson for today. Perseus. Perseus killed Medusa. Man, I love this stuff. It's so great. I'm telling you, when I retire, I'm going to come up with names for all of these things. It's going to be my job. But so what was really cool with Perseus is we used the code against it, right? So we figured out these codes. We figured out the code, and we basically used the code, backdoored it, and killed it across 50 to 60 countries, thousands upon thousands of endpoints around the world. Endpoint could be a computer or whatever, okay? So we got rid of this thing, but it had already done its damage. Imagine, this is what I want you to sort of think about here with this. Imagine if you're a bad guy and you can stay in an organization for 20 years. For 20 years, right? That is crazy. Yep. You're correct, Michael. I agree with you on that. So yeah, so this thing was in 20 years. So we don't know what was stolen. We don't know what was taken. We don't know what the FSB actually gathered from from an espionage perspective. It is crazy. It is really, really crazy when you really think about it. That was number one this summer. Number two, Volt Typhoon, or what we have termed Vanguard Panda. So short on the heels of the first part of May, and I was at annual training for my reserve unit in May, and I'm reading the SNCC malware stuff, and I'm like absolutely losing my mind. I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. I'm gonna have to get into this stuff, and I'm reading stuff. Like a week and a half, like later on that month, right? This thing got subsumed with this thing called Vanguard Panda. What is Vanguard Panda? Vanguard Panda is a Chinese-related advanced persistent threat actor who is going after critical infrastructure. And not necessarily, and everybody, when they hear the term critical infrastructure, they freak out and they think Colonial Pipeline. Everybody has already heard of Colonial Pipeline, right? Colonial Pipeline happened, a couple years back now. It was ransomware against a pipeline organization. It really caused a kerfluffle, right? There really wasn't a shortage of gas, by the way, folks, but we certainly handed the bad guys information operations designs for how to mess with Americans, right? During a crisis. Not cool. Anyways. So when we think critical infrastructure, people think like the stuff that controls the oil and gas pipelines and controls the dissolving, right? Remember, critical infrastructure, electric, water, wastewater, natural gas, heating oil, on and on and on, right? Those things are controlled and managed at a front level, typically by machines that are just like the one you're on right now, a Windows machine that connects to a historian or some sort of server that allows you to assess, or a controller or something like that, to plug in and do stuff on a particular industrial control system or operational technology device. Okay. Here's the thing. OT devices, operational technology, so like the sensors and the pumps and the valves and everything like that, those things are all very much alarmed. Now, not alarming like, but literally like that, right? They're alarmed because we want to detect if somebody's messing with them. The bad guys know this, right? It's not like they've got thousands of agents that are going to roll up to some, oil pipeline and, plug something into the sensors, although physical access is still king. That's not how this works. What the threat actors are doing from a cyber perspective is they want to get to the networks and into the networks that are controlling these devices. Now, where did Volt Typhoon do their activities? So starting in 2021 through most of that year, and this was reported on by Microsoft, and I'll show you where this presentation is posted, so you don't have to worry about trying to screenshot or copy down all the links. That would be dumb. Just hang out and listen to the funness here. Guam. So I'm going to throw out a question. Anybody been to Guam? I have friends in Guam. I have not been to Guam, right? I have not been to Guam, right? Oh, great. I love that, Matthew. Thanks for sharing MITRE ATT&CK for sure. I have friends in Guam, and I promised my friends in Guam I need to get. You've been to Guam, awesome. Okay, so why is Guam once in 2011? Cool, awesome. So why is Guam important? Guam is important because of its proximity to where? Taiwan. Right? What bases? We have Navy bases. Exactly, it is. We have Navy base on Taiwan. We are on Taiwan, on Guam. We have Air Force base on Guam. There's a bunch of stuff. Volt Typhoon specifically got into the electrical providers on Guam that provide the electrical power to the bases there. And what did they do? They basically broke into small office, home office. So like the Wi-Fi access points you got in your house, right? That's what these smaller mom and pop co-ops, and I'm not saying that this isn't bad, right? This isn't Brad saying, oh my God, this is totally bad. That's what they can afford. Okay. So they bought the cheap stuff. The cheap stuff got hacked by Volt Typhoon, Vanguard Panda, and Vanguard Panda then got into their networks and hung out and did some very interesting and living off the land techniques. I'll get to that here in a second, right? But once they got in there, they hung out and gathered a bunch of stuff, figured out how to stuff. I am super concerned that Vanguard Panda is the testing, or use Guam as the testing ground for other places in the United States where this occurs. I'm going to give you a practical example that is near and dear to my heart. Okay, near and dear to my heart. Fort Carson, Colorado, which is yonder about 60 miles south of where I'm, 65 miles about where I'm sitting right now in Centennial. In 2022, signed an agreement with Colorado Springs Utilities, that's the municipality utility company that runs all the stuff for Colorado Springs. They are doing all of the utilities work for all of Fort Carson now. Electric, natural gas, water, wastewater. So now if I'm a bad guy and I want to stop 4th Infantry Division and the 6th Brigade combat teams there and the Aviation Regiment and all the other stuff that's at Fort Carson from getting out the door or messing around with like family members while people are deployed, I don't even have to get inside the fence of the base anymore. I simply destroy Colorado Springs utilities. Not good. Not good. Here's what Vanguard, so you can read this later on the slides right here. Again, this is sort of walking the techniques they did. This is a great report from Microsoft. Totally recommend it, right? They compromised stuff. They used an unknown Fortinet exploit, right? This was a vulnerability for these Fortinet systems that has been out there for a bit, that had not been fixed. Not quite a 0-day, but almost a 0-day. They were working on fixing it. So they did a bunch of stuff, right? They stole stuff, right? They did discovery, right? They staged data for exfil. I mean, all the things you would expect an advanced actor to do, or any actor to do when they get an environment, okay? So here's the thing. Again, dirty little secrets about advanced persistent threats, right? They're not doing anything more exciting than what the cyber criminals are doing or what, hacktivists or other people that are doing, right? APTs are going to use what you give them in their environment, in your environment, right? They are not, guys and gals and folks, 0 days are bloody expensive, right? They cost a lot of money to develop, to create, to manage, to use. And once you burn a 0-day, right, you ain't getting it back. So advanced persistent threat actors do not like to use 0 days if they don't have to. Okay, if they don't have to, they're going to use what they give you or what you give them. And in the case here, what did we find in these networks in Guam? Well, long story short, they sucked at logging, right? And so here's what Vanguard Panda did. They got into the environment, they sat there, and this is what advanced persistent threat actors like to do. They get in the environment, they hang out, then they watch. They're like, yo, what's up? What kind of tools are they using in this network? What are they not logging in this network? Right? And everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is advanced living off the land. No, it's not. It's looking at the logging that you're not doing and then using the tools that you're not logging, right? So they were using PowerShell. They were using all the net use commands. They were using, WMI, right? They would use all of these things, right? Because again, it wasn't being logged. So if I'm a bad guy, and I've played a bad guy on TV before, I'm going to use everything that you give me that you're not logging. Here's the thing, folks, just a quick aside, right? Windows logging out of the box from an endpoint perspective is terrible, right? Nothing is turned on. It doesn't log pretty much anything. It's pretty useless. So you actually have to go in and set that up so you can make good use of Windows logs. Okay. Let me see if I've got that. I should have let me get down here. I should have my Windows logs. Share that there. Let me find my Windows. Find my good Windows logging link for you. Share that because that's super helpful. There we go. That's the one I want. Yep. Here we go. That's the one I want. Where'd you go? Come on now. Go faster. Here we go. Perfect. I'm going to give you that one because that's a super fun reference. Hold on just a second. Here we go. Now, why is this important? Why do we care about Windows logging? Well, one, because we need to know what's going on and we need to see what's going on. That cheat sheet's right there is super fabulous for setting up advanced Windows logging. I totally recommend you do it on your home computer too because it's super fun and stuff you can learn. But here's what I'll tell you. In 2021, the United States government put out, the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, put out a memorandum to the FCEB, the Federal Civilian Executive Branch agencies, and said, hey, you guys should do it. You guys should do logging. Like you suck at it. You should do it better. And basically this memo, which is OMB Memorandum 2131, Enterprise Logging, literally told the bad guys that we, the U.S. government, ain't logging a damn thing. So I want you to think about that, right? When we say stuff, right? When we, the federal government, we the United States, say words out in public about stuff, right? The bad guys are watching. They're always watching, right? And they read that and they go, well, I guess it's time for us to step up our incursions to figure out where we can, hang out and get into stuff so we're not going to get caught because they're not logging us, right? And oh, by the way, the challenge with that particular memorandum was that it came with no money. Everybody here, all my veterans, right? Guess what happens when you ain't got no money? Nothing, right? Y'all know this, right? This is not rocket science. If you don't have any money, if money doesn't come with a particular requirement in the government side of the house, nothing happens, right? So just keep that in mind. It's kind of scary. So logging, super important here. All right, CLOP. Yes, they really are called CLOP, like CL0P. Now, CLOP is interesting. So again, so keeping in mind my summer, right? We started with Snake. Now we got Vanguard Panda, which again I told you I support the Department of Energy, so super concerning for us. And then we get to CLOP. So CLOP discovered a 0-day, so truly a 0-day, i.e. unpatched stuff for a set of software called Move It Transfer. Move It Transfer used to be owned and operated by, oh gosh, what was it? Older software companies, and now, but there's like a whole history. I'm like, wow, that's really still around, kind of thing, right? And so basically, I'm going to give you the real skinny on Move It Transfer. Move It Transfer is a bulk data transfer capability. It runs front end runs on a SQL database that is exposed to the internet. So helpful hints from Brad: don't expose this stuff to the internet. That's a terrible idea. Okay. So what did CLOP do? CLOP went out there. Yep. Thank you. If switch now progress. Thank you very much, Matt. I have not had enough coffee yet this morning. But seriously, yeah. So it's crazy, right? So Move It. Here's the thing that scares me about Move It, right? All these things were hanging out on the internet, right? And all CLOP had to do was go to Shodan. So if you've never played with Shodan, again, I totally recommend you play with Shodan. Wait for the Black Friday sale. You can get a pretty good deal on their on the subscription for that bad boy. There's Shodan for you. Shodan is basically a search engine that looks for all sorts of interesting stuff that are exposed and out there on the internet. Okay, so pretty much this is what I think CLOP did. CLOP figured out that there was this Move It Transfer vulnerability that had not been patched. They tested it. It worked. And then they went out and ran Shodan, found them all in the world, and then pretty much ran a script that pwned every single one of them. Because it was a SQL injection. Simple, right? It's 2023. We're still running SQL injections. So if you don't know what that is, right? That is sending malicious code to a web form to make it give up the cookies, basically. Hey, here's all the stuff about my database. And as soon as they figured out what was on the database, if it was an exploitable, in this case, older Windows server, which is what happened, they would then drop a custom web shell and exfil all the data. Let me tell you the real skinny here on Move It. Move It Transfer affected this particular attack sequence affected Fortune 500 companies, large government organizations, and on and on and on. Here's the dumb thing about this. On Move It Transfer, on the software, on the Move It Transfer server itself, you can choose to encrypt the data at rest. You just got to make that selection. None of the organizations, and some of these organizations are really, really well-respected, well-known organization. If I listened to them, you would be blown away. You'd be like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. It is crazy because these organizations should know better, right? We did OPM. Who was affected by the OPM breach in 2014? I called the help desk in China if I need help with my SF-86. I'm just kidding. I don't call China, but I guess they probably do have a good help desk. Anyways, this is a Russian crime group, right? They stole a bunch of data. They basically said, hey, if you don't pay us X amount of Bitcoin, right, we are going to post your internet on your data on the dark web and on the open internet. And they have been true to their word. They have been busily publishing stuff and outing people. And like I said, lots of big name organizations affected here. And all this could have been prevented if we had simply encrypted the data at rest, right? Because they could have stole all the data they wanted to, but they're going to have to wait for quantum to get through that kind of encryption. But, I guess this is the decisions we make. Here's all of the different versions that were affected by it. So basically, if you had Move It Transfer, you were pretty much hosed. You should just assume compromise and move on. Here's one of those organizations, right? Shell, right? This was their nice little note. They said, so again, I know some folks talked about like ransomware and stuff like that yesterday, right? That's a ransomware note, right? I love the fact here, right? CLOP is one of the top organizations that offers penetration testing services after the fact. My butt. They pretty much breach you and then, make you pay for the breach, right? And so it is crazy to think that these kinds of things are still happening. Because this, folks, this was not like, a rocket science type attack. This wasn't a 0-day that they burned. This was an existing vulnerability that they discovered and exploited. Okay. Here's the thing. What concerns me about Klopp and all of the Russian crime actors, cyber crime actors, is that our friend, Mr. Putin, has pretty much conscripted these guys to help their cause in Ukraine versus Russia. And so I am under no illusion that this is a separate type thing. Okay. I know where all this data went. You remember we talked about APT29 and FSB and SVR and GRU and all this stuff? You know where this data went, folks. This data, especially the government data, right? Even though they said we're not going to publish government data, I know where that government data went, right? So when this stuff happens, right, you see these linkages, right? This again, okay. So pause button. This is fun, right? This is my job, right? This is what I get to do, right? So if this is the kind of stuff that you think is interesting and you're like, man, I want to be able to I'm not necessarily standing toe to toe with the threat actors, right? But I definitely get to see what they're doing and try to stop what they're doing. It's pretty darn cool as a cyber defender to be able to do that. Oh, yes. All right. Barracudas. So Barracuda, you guys have probably, if you guys listen to like the radio, Sirius XM, stuff like that, you've probably heard of, Barracuda software. They have an excellent marketing organization there. They do lots of good stuff. They got hosed by China, by UNC 4841. This is the timeline here. Starting back in October. So truly an APT sort of timeline. Starting in October, they figured out the exploit. They started doing stuff. They started exfiltrating data in December. This is a great report by Manny, and I totally recommend it, right? And then they had a cyber knife fight with Barracuda. No kidding. So here's what happened. We think, from an analysis perspective, that Barracuda, or not Barracuda, but UNC 4841 bought some Barracudas, reverse engineered them, tore them apart down to the bare metal, and figured out these exploits. That's really the only reasonable explanation for how quickly this thing worked. So as soon as they started exfiltrating the data and Barracuda started figuring this out, Barracuda started trying to patch this. I'm going to circle back to that here in a second. They started trying to patch this. Well, the bad guys, UNC 48.1, saw this patch coming, and then as soon as the patch hit, they had the next thing. Literally a cyber knife fight. They're like, okay, you patch that? Boop, I'm still on your box. And then Barracuda would fire another patch. And then they would be like, boop, I'm back on your box. Right? And all this stuff, right? This is my concern. So Barracuda is a black box. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, black box is like we buy lots of black boxes in the military. We do. And like who really knows how that computer system inside, like, say the F-22 works? Nobody does. I have no idea, right? But the vendor does, right? Well, guess what? Barracuda is much the same way, except for email security. And so they were pushing patches and stuff like that. And in fact, worse, in my humble opinion, Barracuda said, hey, just rip and replace and send it back. Really, really concerning when you think about basic incident response, right? I'm never sending that thing back, right? I'm going to try to do my analysis on it so I know what happened. Here's what's really ugly with the Barracudas. Because the Barracudas are in front of email systems and servers, we have no idea what was taken, because bad guys were taking the data right off the ESGs themselves. They weren't even touching an email server, right? Pretty scary. How did this thing work? Right, let me get there. Okay. They dropped an infected tar file. So they sent an email to an email address that would be served by the gateway. And then it had the infected tar file on it that would, as soon as it hit the gateway, tar file, because what happened is what Barracuda ESGs do is they open up and check the files in the email. This is a good thing, except when it's an infected tar file, and it allows you to then immediately hook the box and drop the C-spy backdoor, right? So, and then they would use it then they could monitor all traffic in and out for the stuff that they wanted. Pretty dang scary, pretty dang advanced, and pretty darn awesome. If I was a bad guy, this is what I would love to do. There's absolutely no user interaction required with this at all. At all. Right? And so here's the other thing that's super scary with Barracuda. There's still Barracudas out there that are getting pwned by UNC 4841 right now. CISA put out, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, right, under DHS, put out a warning about a month ago that Barracuda gateways are still being taken over and stuff being stolen, right? I don't know. And here's the thing. MOVE-IT happened. Then Barracuda happened. MOVE-IT was really, really ugly. And Barracuda the Barracuda incidents all sort of hung out under the noise floor, right? I would argue that Barracuda is way worse from an advanced operations perspective. All right, definitely a true APT campaign. You can see they started, it was almost, about 9 months. That's about typical for an APT. Here's who they were going after. Government, high tech, local government, telecom, manufacturing. They were stealing all sorts of stuff, right? Stealing all sorts of stuff for months. And nobody knew. Okay, nobody knew. So I'm going to leave some time for questions at the end here because this is fun. I clearly have my coffee's kicking in because I'm super excited about this stuff, right? This is what I get to do, right? This is my job, right? So as a military veteran and a continuing to serve reservist, right? It's pretty amazing to have gotten to this place. And I'll talk about some tips here in just a second. Crazy summer, right? No kidding, right? These advanced threat actors out there, right? Some of them are really, they're really, really good, right? Really, really good. Obviously, Vanguard Panda, super concerning because of all of the 75% of our critical infrastructure is owned and operated by small mom and pops and co-ops. Okay, you're probably getting your electricity from a co-op. They don't have big budgets, folks. Right? If you're looking for a cool job in cybersecurity somewhere, like you've had so my brother's in he's the air boss in the Nimitz in the Navy, so he's an 05. Good kid, not a kid anymore. But if you're tired of like the traveling around the world life, all of somebody yelling at you, whatever, all that stuff, right? There are plenty of jobs, right? And granted, they don't pay as much as something in the big cities, but if you like the small rural life, right, there are definitely jobs in cybersecurity in these entities, and they'll keep you around for years and years and years, and you probably have a really good time. Okay, so that's important. Clop is an example of a threat actor that didn't have to work real hard. SQL injection. I could have done that SQL injection. I wouldn't do that SQL injection. Not ethical, right? But I could have done that SQL injection. 4841. I am convinced in my analysis of APTs over the years that that threat actors, right, are buying the software that they are reverse engineering. They're buying the hardware they're reverse engineering. I am wholly convinced of that, especially with some of these more recent events where we're seeing really, really detailed work. There's no way that you're just like, firing Cobalt Strike at something. Cobalt Strike's an attack tool, by the way, for pen testing, right? It's not evil. It's for pen testing. They're not just firing exploits at something and seeing what sticks, right? APTs always have a plan, right? They always have a target in mind, right? They're not doing this, on a whim. So I want you to keep that in mind when you think about advanced persistent threats. So I got a bonus for you, Kevs, right? So everybody asks, Brad, how do I prioritize? If I get into a job, right? What and somebody asked me, what is it I should really care about? Obviously, on the slide there, you have the National Vulnerability Database, so the NVD. So that's a really good thing to Google. Good stuff right there. There are hundreds of thousands of vulnerabilities that have been discovered since we started, tracking these numbers, since like the early 2000s. Okay. And everybody freaks out when they see that chart, right? And I should have put the new chart in here because last year, 2022 was 25,000-ish vulnerabilities. 2023 is at about 24,000 right now, by the way. Let me tell you something. All right. Why do we have this continuing growth in vulnerabilities? Because we keep putting stuff on the internet like crockpots and microwaves and toasters and God knows what else. And humans write code and build hardware so they make mistakes. But you can't solve all of those vulnerabilities. What you should be concerned about is what's on the right here, the known exploited vulnerability catalog, right? So these are actual vulnerabilities that are being exploited in the wild, right? CISA has verified them through multiple sources. Really, really great stuff if you need a reference point for that kind of stuff. Right now, there's a really nasty one out there for Cisco iOS devices. If you're working in an organization, or we're going to work in an organization that has Cisco, you probably should tell them they should look at their Cisco devices, because they're probably been pwned. So yeah, good stuff. Super fun. But we're here at VetSecCon, and I just want to touch on some stuff here, right? Some transition stuff. I have transitioned off of active duty once, OIF, OEF, no task force echo. So 4 times. I've transitioned, onto and off of active duty 4 times. Some recommendations for you as you think about your transitions and what you're going to do. 1, network, right? It's great that you're here today, right? Connect with me on LinkedIn, right? I'm happy to connect with everybody here on LinkedIn. And for those that watch this later, I'm happy to connect. Just, find me on LinkedIn. Practice, right? There are great opportunities out there. One of them, I've got LinkedIn here, and I'll drop the link for the presentation here in a second. Is this right here, Sans Holiday Hack, right? Love Sans Holiday Hack. Really, really fun. If you've never done a really fun CTF before, every year they build a new Sans Holiday Hack that's totally new, fun stuff, really great learning opportunity. Do that kind of stuff, practice, right? It ain't all about the hacking and the pen testing. I know you've already seen the movie. They've seen Hackers and the Net and all these other movies, and and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, blah, 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 blah. No. Okay. There's so much more in cyber, right? There's admin stuff in cyber. There's audit stuff in cyber. There is a cyber defense is just as hard and challenging and interesting as all the hacking and the presentation and the pen testing stuff, right? You have to, in order to be a cyber defender, you actually have to know the hacking and pen testing skills, right? So it's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that, right? For veterans, you guys and gals and everyone here, you know how to plan, right? You would be surprised when you get out into, I'll call it the real world. I know you're in the real world right now, but you get out into the real world, you know how to plan. Holy freaking cow, right? I love my civilian brothers and sisters. I really, really do. But my God, they can't plan to say, can't plan to, to walk their way out of a wet paper sack half the time, right? If you have a clearance, right? And you want to work for the US government, right? Not just the DoD, but the US government. There's a lot of jobs in the USG that require you have some sort of clearance, right? It may not be called a secret, or a TS might be called something totally different, right? But I want you to maintain that clearance if you want to do that, right? If you're looking at professional certifications, you saw my list of pros, are way too many. I'd say better than half of those I did on betas. Right. So a lot of the testing organizations and certifying bodies will do beta tests for their new tests. It's like usually a lot cheaper. Like instead of being $200 or $300, it's like $50. You can actually, study up for the test, pass the test. And if you pass the beta, you get the certification. So it's just a little helpful hint there. Lots of free stuff out there, right? All the SAM Cyber Summits are free. Obviously VetSecCon. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, just put in one quick word. I'm a part of the national leadership for a sister organization to VetSec called the Military Cyber Professionals Association. So if you're interested in that, we also have a con, and we do other fun stuff like that to help veterans along the way, very similar to VetSec, but really focused on the active guard and reserve and DoD civilians. So if that's something of interest to you, look us up at nocyber.org. I think that is my last slide. VetSecCon, thanks so much. This has been a blast. I hope you guys have had some fun here. Well, I've got a few minutes. I got a couple of minutes, and I know I think what questions do you guys have? If you can throw one or two in the chat, I'll see if I can answer them real quick. All right, no questions. All right. Yep. Thanks, Ron. You are very welcome. Hey, you know what, folks? This is what this is all about, right? You hear the numbers. What kind of job would you advise an absolute newbie to get in their foot in the door? Oh, great question, Chris. So here's the thing. Most people that are transitioning out of this, right? I want you to get some experience. And so security operations centers, right? Even some basic IT security and help desk stuff, right? It is a great place to start, right? Because a lot of people that want to get into this field think they need to jump in right away and know all the things. Folks, I've been doing this for 26, almost 27 years, right? There is way too much to learn. You can't just jump right in out of the gate and hope that you're going to get there. That doesn't work, right? And don't feel bad about that, right? I still have stuff that I'm learning. I have a laundry list of stuff I need to learn. But security operations centers, tier one analyst type jobs, some of that stuff is a really, really great place to start. It's up at the top there, Lisa, millcyber.org, right? Ron posted the link up a little ways in the chat pod. So I think that I am at time, folks. It has been, contracts as well, right? Folks, it has been my absolute pleasure to be with you this morning. I hope you have a great Saturday. I hope you get some more coffee. Please, please, please hit me up on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with everyone here. And let's talk. And like I said, I'll be posting stuff about jobs at Accenture Federal here as soon as a bunch of this other stuff drops. So I'd love to talk more with all of you. So, and welcome to cybersecurity. We love having you. Thanks, everybody.